A silent cry for help. The wind howled through the broken metal frames of the abandoned battlefield. Thick smoke curled into the sky, hiding the sun behind a veil of gray. Jack pulled his worn-out jacket tighter around him and moved carefully through the ruins. Every step crunched against broken glass and scorched earth. He had heard rumors about this place. A deadly clash between two alien factions had turned it into a graveyard. Jack wasn't supposed to be here, but curiosity had dragged him beyond the safe zones. He wasn't looking for treasure or trouble, he was looking for something different. He just didn't know what yet. Suddenly, he stopped. His ears picked up a faint sound, almost lost under the wailing wind. It was soft, shaky. A cry. Jack crouched down and scanned the area. His heart pounded as he moved towards the sound, weaving through collapsed walls and burnt-out vehicles. He tightened his grip on his small plasma pistol, though he knew it would be useless against real danger. The cry came again. Closer this time. Pushing aside a piece of broken armor, Jack found her. She was lying between two crumbling pillars, half buried under debris. Her body was small and slim, her skin a pale shade of silver. Her clothes, or what was left of them, looked like they had once been some kind of battle armor. Now it was torn and stained with blood. Jack's first instinct was to back away. This was an alien, not one of his kind. But as he looked closer, he saw her face twisted in pain. She wasn't a threat, at least not now. She was badly hurt. Her left leg was bent at an unnatural angle. There were deep cuts across her arms and shoulders. Despite her injuries, her eyes opened for a second, locking onto Jack's. Even in her weakness, there was a sharpness in her gaze, a fire that refused to die. Jack swallowed hard. He knew he should leave. This wasn't his fight. Helping her could mean trouble. Big trouble. But something inside him, something deep and stubborn, pushed him forward. He dropped to his knees beside her. Easy. Easy, he whispered, knowing she wouldn't understand his words but hoping she could feel his tone. Carefully, he brushed away the debris trapping her. She flinched when he touched her arm, a low growl escaping her lips. Jack froze, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. After a tense moment, she stopped struggling, too weak to resist. Jack worked quickly, lifting her as gently as he could. She was lighter than he expected, but every movement made her wince in pain. He wrapped her in his jacket, shielding her from the cold wind. As he carried her through the ruins, Jack's mind raced. He needed a safe place, somewhere hidden where he could treat her wounds. He remembered the crashed transport ship he had seen earlier. Its hollow shell might offer enough cover. Moving as fast as he dared, Jack made his way back to the ship. All around him, the ruins creaked and moaned, as if warning him he was not welcome here. Every shadow looked like an enemy. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. Finally, he reached the shipwreck. Inside, it was dark and musty, but better than nothing. Jack found a small corner, hidden by twisted beams, and gently laid the alien girl down. She whimpered but didn't resist. Jack rummaged through his pack, pulling out a small first aid kit. It wasn't meant for alien biology, but it was all he had. He cleaned her wounds as best he could, wrapping them with strips of clean cloth. As he worked, Jack noticed strange patterns glowing faintly under her skin. They looked like tattoos, but they shifted slightly, almost like they were alive. He had never seen anything like it. Who was she? Why was she left behind? Jack had no answers. When he finished, he sat back, watching her breathe. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, but she was alive. For now. Outside, the wind roared louder. In the distance, Jack thought he heard something else. Metallic clanks, muffled voices. He wasn't alone. He checked his pistol and peered through a crack in the wreckage. Figures moved among the ruins, armed and searching. Jack's stomach twisted into a knot. They weren't here for him. They were looking for her. And now, by saving her, Jack had made himself their enemy too. He took a deep breath, heart pounding, in his chest. There was no turning back now. The hidden enemy, the silence inside the broken ship was thick, almost heavy. Jack crouched beside the wounded alien girl, listening closely. Every breath she took sounded loud in the darkness. Every creak of the ruined metal around them made his heart jump. Outside, faint footsteps moved across the rubble. Jack's mind raced. He had hoped they were alone. But now it was clear someone or something was hunting them. And they were close. He checked the alien girl again. Her silver skin was pale, and sweat glistened on her forehead. She was slipping deeper into unconsciousness. She needed real medical help, something he could not give. And fast. Jack looked around. The shipwreck had many broken chambers and twisted corridors. It could hide them for a while. But if the hunters knew she was nearby, it was only a matter of time before they searched every corner. He had to move her. But where? He didn't know this place well. He had only stumbled upon it while scavenging for supplies. Now it felt like a trap closing in on him. The footsteps grew louder. Jack pressed, himself against the cold metal wall, holding his breath. He saw shadows stretch across the floor. Strange voices spoke in a language he couldn't understand. Sharp, clipped words that sounded like orders. He peeked through a gap in the wall. 3 figures moved among the wreckage. They wore black armor that shimmered slightly, bending the light around them. Each carried a weapon that looked deadly even from a distance. Their movements were precise, practiced. They weren't scavengers. They were soldiers. And they were searching carefully, methodically. Jack's heart hammered in his chest. He had to think fast. He glanced at the alien girl. She stirred slightly, a soft groan escaping her lips. Jack placed a hand gently on her shoulder, silently begging her to stay quiet. The soldiers moved closer. One of them stopped right outside the broken chamber where Jack was hiding. The soldier tapped something on his wrist, and a small drone buzzed into the air, its light sweeping across the wreckage. Jack pulled the alien girl deeper into the shadows, hiding behind a fallen beam. The drone floated into the room, scanning back and forth with a soft mechanical hum. Sweat dripped down Jack's face. He tightened his grip on the pistol, knowing it would do little against 3 armored soldiers and a drone. The drone's light swept over the beam they hid behind. Jack held his breath, feeling the girl tremble slightly in his arms. Then a sudden sharp noise echoed from another part of the ship, a metal sheet falling in the distance. The drone paused, then zipped away, toward the noise. The soldier outside barked a short command, and all 3 moved toward the sound. Jack exhaled slowly, muscles trembling from tension. Someone, or something, had just saved them. But he knew the distraction would not last long. He needed a plan. Carefully, Jack lifted the alien girl again. Her body was burning with fever, but she clung weakly to his jacket. He moved deeper into the wreckage, following a narrow path that sloped downward. He had seen a broken maintenance shaft earlier. Maybe it could hide them. As he moved, Jack noticed more signs of battle. Burn marks, broken weapons, dried blood. This place had seen terrible fighting. And judging by the soldiers outside, whatever had happened here was not over yet. They reached the shaft. It was narrow and dark, but it led underground. Jack didn't hesitate. He slipped inside, dragging a loose metal sheet over the entrance behind them. The tunnel was cramped and smelled of rust and old smoke. Jack moved slowly, feeling the girl's shallow breathing against his chest. After a few minutes, they reached a small chamber. It looked like an old storage room, long forgotten. Broken crates and damaged equipment lay scattered around. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. Jack laid the alien girl down gently on a makeshift bed of torn cloth. He tore open a water pouch and carefully dripped some into her mouth. She coughed weakly but swallowed. He sat down beside her, pistol in hand, eyes fixed on the entrance. Time dragged by in heavy, painful minutes. Every sound from above made him flinch. At one point, he heard boots thudding across the ground above. Then silence. Jack gripped his pistol tighter, ready to fight if needed. But no one came. Slowly, the sounds faded away. For now, they were safe. Jack leaned back against the wall, exhausted. His eyes felt heavy, but he forced himself to stay awake. He needed to protect her. He didn't know why he cared so much. She was an alien, a stranger. But leaving her behind had never been an option. As he sat in the darkness, Jack thought about the glowing marks on her skin, the way she had looked at him with fierce eyes even when wounded. She was more than just a survivor. She was something powerful, something dangerous. And now Jack was part of her story, whether he liked it or not. The warrior awakens. The hours dragged on in the darkness of the broken storage room. Jack sat beside the alien girl, his body stiff and tired, but his mind alert. He listened carefully to every sound, every creak from above. Outside, the world was still dangerous, but for now, they were hidden. The girl remained unconscious, her silver skin shining faintly under the dim emergency light that flickered overhead. The glowing marks on her arms and neck pulsed slowly, as if alive. Jack had never seen anything like it. He wondered if she was healing or changing. He leaned his head back against the wall, letting his eyes close for a moment. A sharp sound snapped him awake. A low, growling voice echoed through the shaft outside their hiding place. Jack grabbed his pistol and crouched low. Heavy footsteps thudded on the metal floor above them. The soldiers were still searching. Jack turned to the alien girl, ready to move her if necessary. But something stopped him. She was awake. Her eyes, sharp and bright like molten silver, locked onto his. There was no fear in them now, only fierce focus. She sat up slowly, wincing but determined. Jack reached out to help, but she pushed his hand away gently, shaking her head. She moved with the control of someone trained for battle, despite the pain written across her face. Jack watched in stunned silence as she tore a strip of cloth from the makeshift bed and tied it around her injured leg, securing it tightly. It wasn't perfect, but it would let her move. Then she did something Jack didn't expect. She pulled a small device from a hidden pocket in her broken armor, a scanner. It flickered weakly but showed a holographic map of the wreckage above them. Blinking lights marked moving enemies. She pointed at the soldiers' positions, then at herself, then at Jack. Jack understood. She wasn't asking for help. She was planning to fight. He shook his head, whispering, "No, you're too hurt." But she only gave him a hard look, full of stubborn fire, and pressed a finger to her lips. Silence. The girl pulled herself to her feet, swaying slightly, but steady. She moved to the edge of the hiding place and listened carefully to the sounds above. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. This was not a helpless victim. This was a warrior, and she was about to go to war again. Before he could stop her, she slipped into the shaft, moving like a shadow. Jack cursed under his breath and followed, staying low and quiet. They climbed through the narrow tunnels, using old service ladders and forgotten maintenance routes. Jack marveled at how easily she navigated the darkness, as if she had memorized every twist and turn. They reached a rusted grate above them. The girl peered through it and saw two soldiers standing guard nearby, their weapons ready. Jack's hand tightened around his pistol, but the girl stopped him with a small wave. She pointed at herself, then at the soldiers. Jack realized she was telling him to stay back. He hesitated, torn between fear and awe, but nodded. With a slow, deliberate motion, the girl pushed the grate aside and slipped out into the open. For a moment, Jack thought she would collapse, but she didn't. She moved like a ghost. Before the soldiers even realized she was there, she struck. In one smooth motion, she grabbed the nearest soldier's weapon, twisted it from his hands, and slammed the butt into his face. He crumpled without a sound. The second soldier turned too slow. She ducked under his aim, grabbed his arm, and flipped him over her shoulder with shocking strength. He hit the ground hard, dazed. Jack stared, wide-eyed. She was a force of nature, silent, deadly, unstoppable. The girl turned and gestured for Jack to follow. Together they moved through the wreckage, avoiding patrols, disabling guards silently whenever possible. Jack's heart pounded with adrenaline and fear. Every step they took brought them closer to freedom, but also closer to being discovered. Finally, they reached the outer edge of the ruins, where the buildings were more broken and less guarded. They crouched behind a fallen pillar, catching their breath. Jack looked at her, feeling a strange mixture of respect and fear. Who was she? How could someone so badly wounded fight like that? He opened his mouth to ask, but before he could speak, a sharp whine filled the air. Drones, at least 3 of them, hovering above, scanning the area. Jack cursed silently. They couldn't outrun. Drones! The girl narrowed her eyes, thinking fast. She grabbed a small device from the dead soldier's belt. A signal jammer. It was damaged but still functional. She fiddled with it quickly, sparks flying from the broken wires. The drones swept closer. Jack raised his pistol, ready for a last stand. Then, the jammer beeped once. The drones froze mid-air, their lights flickering, wildly, then dropped to the ground like dead insects. Jack let out a shaky breath. The girl gave a small, tired smile. For the first time, Jack saw a glimpse of something softer beneath her fierce warrior mask. A spark of gratitude. They weren't safe yet, but they had a chance, and somehow Jack knew he would follow her anywhere. Because whatever came next, it was better to face it together. Ambush in the ruins. The cold wind screamed through the open cracks of the broken city. Jack and the alien girl moved quickly between the ruined buildings, careful to stay low and hidden. They had escaped the first patrols, but the hunt was far from over. The girl's steps were lighter now. Even with her injuries, she moved with silent precision, checking every corner, every shadow before they crossed it. Jack followed her lead, trusting her instincts more than his own. They had no real plan, only the desperate hope of reaching the deep forest beyond the city ruins. If they made it there, they could lose their pursuers. But the soldiers were closing in. The radio chatter they had picked up earlier crackled with urgent voices. They knew someone had taken their target. And they were determined to find them. Jack and the girl reached an open plaza, once beautiful, now shattered by war. Broken statues lay scattered across the cracked stone floor, and burnt banners flapped uselessly in the cold wind. The girl stopped suddenly, raising her hand. Jack froze behind her. Ahead, at the far end of the plaza, figures moved. A squad of soldiers, bigger, heavier, more prepared than before. They were setting up something, energy barriers, portable shield generators. They were creating a trap. Jack's heart sank. They weren't just searching anymore. They were waiting. The girl turned to Jack, her silver eyes filled with grim understanding. They had no choice. To escape, they would have to fight. Jack checked, his pistol. The charge was low. He grimaced but nodded. He would fight. He owed her that much. The girl touched the weapon in Jack's hand, shaking her head. She pointed to a broken supply cart nearby. Jack followed her, confused but trusted her judgment. Inside the cart, among burned supplies, Jack found something unexpected. Old explosives, half buried under debris. Unstable but still dangerous. A plan formed quickly between them, with only a few gestures and looks. Create chaos. Break the trap. Run. Jack and the girl moved separately now, each circling the plaza from different sides. Jack's heart hammered in his chest as he crawled behind fallen pillars and shattered statues. He reached the explosives and carefully wired a few of them together, setting a simple timer using parts from his damaged radio. He glanced across the plaza. The girl was already in position, crouched behind a broken fountain. She gave a small nod. Jack activated the timer and slipped away, heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. 20 seconds. The soldiers didn't notice. They laughed, joked, confident in their numbers and their trap. 15 seconds. Jack reached a safe distance and ducked behind a crumbling wall. 10 seconds. The girl moved like a shadow, positioning herself closer to the shield generators. 5 seconds. Jack held his breath. The explosion tore through the plaza with a deafening roar. Shards of stone and metal flew through the air. The shield generators cracked and sparked, some collapsing completely. Smoke covered everything. Chaos erupted. Soldiers shouted, firing blindly into the smoke. Confusion spread through their ranks. Jack jumped up, running fast and low. Through the thick smoke he saw the girl, a blur of silver and shadow, moving between the enemy lines. She struck with deadly precision, disarming soldiers, knocking them unconscious, stealing weapons and turning them against their owners. Jack fired when he had to, hitting legs, knocking weapons from hands. He wasn't a soldier, but desperation made him fierce. Through the chaos, they pushed toward the outer ruins. But it wasn't over. A new sound cut through the battle. Heavy footsteps, too heavy for normal soldiers. Jack looked back and saw them, armored, enforcers. 3 of them, giant figures in black power suits built for frontline war. They carried massive energy rifles that could tear a man in half. The girl saw them too. Her face tightened in focus. There was no time to run, no time to hide. They had to stand and fight. Jack and the girl took cover behind a fallen column as energy blasts tore through the stone around them. The girl checked the small jammer device again. Broken, useless now. Jack's mind raced. How could they fight armored giants with a half-dead pistol and stolen rifles? The girl reached into her armor and pulled out one last weapon. A blade. Not an ordinary blade. The moment she activated it, a humming energy edge sprang to life, glowing with a soft blue light. Jack stared, amazed. The girl gave him a small, grim smile as if saying, "Stay alive." Then she moved. Like a flash of lightning, she charged the first enforcer. The armored giant tried to aim, but the girl was too fast. She dodged the blast and leapt onto him, driving the energy blade into the weak point at his neck. The enforcer collapsed with a heavy crash. Jack covered her from the distance, shooting at the other 2, forcing them to slow down. The second enforcer fired wildly, hitting the ground near Jack and throwing him backward. Pain shot through Jack's side, but he forced himself up. The girl moved to the second enforcer, using the ruins to stay hidden until the last moment. She struck again. Fast, brutal, precise. Only one remained. This one was smarter, more careful. He used a shield generator on his arm to block the girl's attacks, backing her into a corner. Jack saw it happening, and without thinking, he acted. He grabbed a broken energy grenade from a fallen soldier and hurled it toward the last enforcer. The grenade bounced once, twice, and exploded in a blinding flash. The enforcer staggered, shield flickering. It was enough. The girl surged forward, slicing through his armor with her blade. The final enforcer fell. The battlefield fell silent except for the crackle of fires and the soft hum of dying equipment. Jack stumbled toward the girl. She was breathing hard, her body shaking with exhaustion, but her eyes were still fierce. They had won. For now. The girl reached out, steadying Jack as he almost collapsed beside her. They looked at each other. 2 survivors, broken but unbowed. Somewhere, beyond the ruined city, new dangers waited. But in that moment, in the smoke and ruins, they were alive, and they were ready for whatever came next. The warrior's secret. The smoke of the ruined battlefield drifted high into the gray sky, hiding the sun once again. Jack and the alien girl moved slowly through the wreckage, both limping, both exhausted. Every step was a struggle, but neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. They had survived the ambush. But Jack knew the real danger was not over. As they reached the edge of the broken city, Jack spotted a hidden tunnel entrance, half covered by fallen debris. It looked old, unused for years. Maybe it would offer shelter. Maybe it would give them time to breathe. The girl nodded weakly when he pointed toward it. Together they slipped inside. Inside the tunnel, the air was damp and cold. Broken lights flickered on the walls. Old machines lined the sides, covered in dust and rust. Jack found a corner behind a heavy metal pipe and helped the girl sit down carefully. Her wounds were reopening, blood staining the cloth bindings he had wrapped earlier. Jack's hands trembled as he searched his pack for supplies. He found a few patches, a small energy cell, and a broken med scanner. "Stay still," he whispered, voice shaking. The girl gave him a tired look, but she obeyed. As Jack cleaned and patched her wounds again, he noticed something strange. The glowing marks on her skin, The living tattoos were changing. They moved slowly like rivers of light under her skin. And then something even stranger happened. The marks formed a pattern. Jack recognized. A symbol. He had seen it before, in old files, in war reports. The mark of the Black Suns, the most feared, warrior unit among the alien factions. They were more than soldiers. They were legends, unstoppable, merciless, undefeated. Jack froze, his heart hammering. This girl wasn't just any fighter. She had been one of them. A Black Sun. Jack sat back, stunned. The girl opened her eyes, watching him carefully. She must have seen the fear in his face. Slowly, painfully, she reached into a hidden pocket in her broken armor and pulled out a small device. A translator shard. She held it out to Jack. After a brief hesitation, Jack took it, fitting it behind his ear. The device buzzed softly, linking to the girl's voice. She spoke, her voice weak but clear. "You are afraid," she said simply. Jack swallowed hard. You were one of them," he said. "Black Suns." The girl closed her eyes for a moment, then nodded. "I was," she whispered, "but no longer." Jack struggled to understand. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you leave them?" She looked at him, and for the first time Jack saw something different in her eyes. Sorrow. Regret. "I followed orders," she said. "I believed. I fought without question. But then, they gave an order I could not obey." Her voice shook slightly. "They ordered us to destroy a village, not soldiers, not fighters, only children, only families, to send a message." Jack felt a cold knot twist in his stomach. "I refused," she said. "And so they hunted me, wounded me, left me to die." Silence filled the tunnel, heavy and painful. Jack sat there, heart aching. She wasn't a monster. She was a warrior who had found her own heart too late. "I thought I would die alone," she whispered. "Until you." Jack didn't know what to say. He reached out slowly and placed his hand over hers. "You're not alone," he said softly. A small, broken smile touched her lips. For a long time, they sat there in silence, two broken souls in the darkness. But the world outside hadn't forgotten them. A low rumble shook the ground beneath them. Jackie stiffened, listening. The girl tensed too, her hand moving to her blade instinctively. The tunnel was no longer safe. They needed to move. Now. Jack helped her to her feet, and together they moved deeper into the tunnels, following the faint remains of old maintenance paths as they walked. The girl told him more, about her training, how she had been taken as a child, molded into a weapon, about the Black Suns, how they had no names, only numbers. Her name, she said quietly, had been stripped from her long ago. She was known only as Unit 17. Jack shook his head. "You're not a number," he said. "You're more than that." She gave him a strange look, as if no one had ever said that to her before. They kept moving, the tunnels twisting and turning like a maze. Suddenly, they reached a dead end. A thick, metal door rusted shut. Jack cursed under his breath. The girl knelt by the door, examining the old control panel. It was dead, no power. But the girl didn't give up. She opened the panel and began connecting wires using parts from the broken scanner Jack carried. Jack kept watch, his pistol ready. The rumbling was getting louder. They were coming. Jack could hear them now. Boots on metal, voices shouting in the distance. "Hurry," he thought desperately. The girl's hands moved quickly, expertly. Sparks flew. The control panel beeped once. The heavy door groaned, then slid open a few inches. Enough. Jack pushed it wider, and they slipped through. They found themselves in an old transport hangar, half collapsed but open to the outside world. Beyond the ruins, Jack could see the faint outline of the forest. Their goal. They were close. But behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Soldiers poured into the tunnel, searching, shouting. The girl turned to Jack, her silver eyes burning with determination. She would not be captured again. Not while she still breathed. Jack nodded. Together, they ran through broken halls, through crumbling walls, into the fading light of a world that had almost forgotten them. But Jack knew one thing. The world would soon remember. Because a fearless warrior and a stubborn human were about to change everything. Against all odds, the forest loomed ahead like a dark wall, thick and wild. The alien girl stumbled once but caught herself, breathing heavily. Jack moved beside her, supporting her with one arm as they ran across the broken ground of the hangar. Every step was a battle against pain and exhaustion. Behind them, angry shouts echoed through the ruins. Flashes of light lit up the tunnel entrances as soldiers poured into the old transport yard, their weapons ready, their eyes searching. Jack's heart pounded against his ribs. He knew they couldn't outrun them for long. Not like this. The girl tugged at his arm, pulling him toward a half-collapsed walkway that stretched over the battlefield. It was dangerous, weak and rusted, but it was their only chance to gain some distance. They scrambled up the twisted metal ladder, every movement sending sharp pain through their battered bodies. The walkway groaned under their weight. Jack gritted his teeth and kept going. Halfway across, the first shots rang out. Energy blasts slammed into the walkway behind them, tearing holes in the rusted metal. Jack ducked instinctively, dragging the girl lower. They crawled forward, moving fast but staying low. One blast struck the beam just inches from Jack's hand, making the entire structure shudder. "Keep going," Jack whispered fiercely. The girl nodded, her silver eyes burning with determination. Together they pushed on. They reached the far end of the walkway and dropped down into a narrow alley of collapsed vehicles. Thick vines had overgrown the wreckage, creating a natural tunnel. Jack heard the soldiers spreading out, coordinating their movements. They were trapping them from all sides. "They're cutting us off," Jack said, breathing hard. The girl glanced around, her mind working quickly. She spotted a broken service door half hidden under vines. She pointed. Jack didn't hesitate. They rushed to it and slipped inside. The building was dark and ruined, an old storage facility. Broken crates and shattered screens littered the floor. It smelled of damp metal and old fire. Inside, the girl leaned against the wall, her strength nearly gone. Jack crouched beside her. They needed a plan. Something bold, something desperate. The girl pulled out a small hologram projector from her belt. It flickered weakly to life, showing a rough map of the area. Jack leaned closer. There was a hidden underground maintenance shaft beneath this building. It led toward the forest edge. If they could find the entrance, they might still escape. But it wouldn't be easy. The soldiers were already closing in. Jack heard them outside, heavy boots, sharp orders. Time was running out. He looked at the girl. She nodded. No words were needed. They understood each other now. Jack moved quickly, searching through the rubble. Finally, he found a rusted metal plate half buried under fallen crates. Together, they pulled it free. Beneath it, a narrow shaft plunged into darkness. Jack dropped down first, landing hard on the uneven ground. He looked up and caught the girl. As she lowered herself carefully, the tunnel smelled of earth and old oil. It stretched into blackness, leading toward freedom. Or a dead end. Jack clicked on a small flashlight and led the way. They moved quickly, every step echoing down the narrow passage. Above them, they could hear the soldiers ransacking the building, shouting angrily as they realized their prey had slipped away again. Jack's heart raced. He pushed forward faster, guiding the girl carefully. But soon, they reached a fork in the tunnel. Two paths. One sloped downward, deeper into the unknown. The other twisted sharply upward toward the surface. Jack hesitated. Before he could decide, the girl placed a hand on his arm and pointed upward. Trusting her instincts, Jack nodded and led the way. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to move single file. They climbed through broken maintenance panels, squeezing past collapsed walls. Every muscle in Jack's body ached, but he didn't stop. Finally, they reached a heavy access door. Jack pushed against it. It didn't budge. He tried again using his shoulder. Still nothing. The girl stepped forward, She pulled a broken access key from her belt, jammed it into the rusted panel beside the door, and twisted hard. Sparks flew. The door shuddered, then groaned open a few inches, just enough. Jack squeezed through first, then pulled the girl after him. They stumbled out into fresh air. Trees towered above them, thick and ancient. The forest. Freedom. But there was no time to celebrate. Behind them, the soldiers spilled from the ruins, spotting them immediately. Shouts filled the air. Energy blasts ripped through the trees around them. Jack grabbed the girl's hand, and they ran. Branches tore at their clothes and skin. Roots threatened to trip them, but they didn't stop. The forest swallowed them, hiding them from view. Still the soldiers pursued, crashing through the undergrowth like a pack of wild beasts. Jack knew they couldn't outrun them forever. They needed another plan. Suddenly, the girl pulled Jack into a thick clump of vines. She pointed upward. Jack followed her gaze. High above them, hidden by thick leaves, was an ancient rope bridge stretched across a deep ravine. The bridge looked barely stable. Old ropes, rotting wood, but it was the only way forward. Without thinking, they scrambled up the steep slope toward it. Shots whizzed past them, cutting through branches and sending leaves flying. Jack reached the bridge first. He tested it carefully. It creaked and swayed dangerously but held. He helped the girl onto it. Together they began crossing. The bridge swayed wildly under their combined weight. Below them, the ravine dropped into misty darkness. One wrong step, and they would be lost. Halfway across, Jack heard the soldiers reaching the edge of the ravine behind them. They opened fire. Bolts of energy sliced through the ropes. The bridge jerked violently. Planks cracked and splintered. The girl stumbled. Jack caught her, pulling her upright. "Almost there," he whispered, voice raw. They pushed forward. Another blast struck the ropes behind them. The bridge started to collapse. With a final desperate surge, they threw themselves onto solid ground, just as the bridge snapped and tumbled into the ravine. Jack lay gasping. On the forest floor, the girl beside him. Behind them, the soldiers cursed and shouted, trapped on the other side. They had made it. Barely. Jack turned to the girl, grinning weakly. "We're alive." The girl smiled back, exhaustion and relief mingling in her silver eyes. But deep inside, Jack knew this wasn't the end. The real fight was still ahead. They had escaped the hunters. Now they had to face whatever waited in the deeper shadows of the forest, and whatever it was, they would face it together, against all odds. The beginning of a new legend. The forest around them was vast and endless, a sea of ancient trees and thick mist. Jack and the alien girl moved carefully, each step slow but determined. The chase had left them bruised, bleeding, and exhausted, but their spirits remained unbroken. Above them, strange alien birds called out with haunting cries. The forest floor was covered in thick roots and hidden pits, forcing them to stay alert with every step. Hours passed. The sounds of pursuit had faded behind them, swallowed by the dense woods, but Jack knew better than to feel safe. The Black Suns, or whoever was leading the soldiers, would not give up so easily. They would hunt until the end. As night fell, the forest transformed into a world of shadows and whispers. Small, glowing insects floated in the air like tiny stars, lighting their path in ghostly green. Jack found a small hollow beneath the roots of a giant fallen tree. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. He helped the girl inside and quickly set small energy traps around the area, stolen from fallen soldiers, to warn them of any approach. Finally, for the first time in days, they rested. Jack leaned back, against the tree trunk, watching the girl as she slept fitfully. Her face, so fierce in battle, now looked peaceful and vulnerable. He thought about everything they had survived, and everything still waiting ahead. He didn't know why fate had thrown them together, but he knew one thing for certain. He would not leave her side, not now, not ever. A sharp beep from one of the energy traps jolted him awake. Jack grabbed his pistol, heart racing, but it wasn't soldiers. A small drone, battered and cracked, floated into view. Jack aimed his weapon, ready to fire. But the girl woke and stopped him with a soft sound. She pushed herself up weakly and made a series of hand signs toward the drone. To Jack's surprise, the drone responded, flashing a series of colored lights. It wasn't enemy tech. It was hers, a signal beacon. She must have activated it back at the ruins without him noticing, a last desperate hope for rescue. The drone projected a small, shaky, hologram. Figures appeared. Not soldiers, but rebels, survivors of her people. They had received her signal. They were coming. Hope flickered in Jack's chest. But with it came new danger. The soldiers would also detect the beacon. They had little time. The girl struggled to her feet, determination hardening her features once more. Jack stood beside her. They would have to move again deeper into the forest, to the extraction point shown on the map, and they would have to fight for every step. The next few hours passed in a blur of fear and movement. They weaved through the thick woods, hiding from search drones, avoiding patrols, using every trick Jack had ever learned to stay invisible. But fate was cruel. As they neared the extraction point, a clearing surrounded by ancient stones, the enemy found them. A squad of black-armored soldiers burst from the trees, weapons blazing. Jack pushed the girl behind a fallen log and returned fire, every shot precise and desperate. The girl fought too, using a broken rifle she had repaired with spare parts. But there were too many. They were surrounded. Jack's heart pounded wildly. Was this how it would end? After everything they had survived? Then, the night exploded with light. Shadows moved among the trees, fast, deadly. Figures cloaked in shifting armor struck the enemy lines with brutal force. The rebels had arrived. The battle turned swiftly. The Black Sun soldiers, caught between Jack's defense and the rebel assault, broke ranks and fell one by one. Jack watched in stunned relief as the rebels, alien fighters of all shapes and sizes, overwhelmed the enemy with silent, coordinated fury. When the last soldier fell, silence returned to the forest. The rebels moved toward Jack and the girl. One of them, taller and older, stepped forward. He wore a cloak marked with ancient symbols, a leader. He spoke in a deep, calm voice. "You have done more than you know," he said through a translator. "You have not only saved her, you have saved a future." Jack helped the girl stand. She faced the rebel leader, her back straight despite her wounds. The leader bowed deeply to her, a gesture of immense respect, and then, in a voice filled with quiet power, he said, "Welcome home, Commander." Jack blinked in shock. Commander? She wasn't just a warrior. She had been a leader, a legend among her people. The girl turned to Jack, a rare smile touching her lips. Then, in front of everyone, she reached up and removed the battered badge from her broken armor, the last piece of her old life. She stepped forward and pressed it into Jack's hand. Jack looked down at it, stunned. The badge glowed faintly, pulsing with hidden energy, a symbol of trust, a symbol of belonging. He wasn't just an outsider anymore. He was one of them, a brother in arms, a part of something far bigger than himself. Cheers rose around them as the rebels gathered, welcoming them both into their ranks. In that moment, Jack understood. They had survived not because they were lucky. They had survived because they had each other. Because when everything was against them, they had chosen to fight, to hope, to believe. And now, together, they would build something new, something stronger, something better. A new legend had begun, forged not in power, but in courage, sacrifice, and unbreakable trust. And Jack knew that whatever battles lay ahead, they would face them side by side, as warriors, as family, as the beginning of a new future.